And here's my orange and blue, just for now, just where I found Christmas here, that I decided I'm the wear this, so. My name is Justin Cazana. I'm with Avis & Young Commercial Real Estate. We're a full-service commercial real estate firm here in Knoxville that does property management, brokerage, a little bit of development, and all kinds of things. So I'm here with Sarah Hesketh, who has been working with me for 3 years. Avis & Young, in its current form, has been around for 13 years. I've been in the industry technically for 19 years, but actually for 51 years because I was born into it. It's, you don't know my dad who's been in the industry for 57 years now. So there's a lot of benefits in real estate. That's not a surprise. Today we're going to talk in commercial real estate has a lot of different aspects to it. Residential is pretty much just houses, condos, things like that. Commercial real estate can be office, industrial, retail, hospitality, like hotels, multifamily, storage, self-storage, cold storage. I mean, there are endless segments of commercial real estate. We're going to talk about the basics of it and how it affects Knoxville and how Knoxville is different from all those big markets and all those, those nightmare scenarios that you hear about from around the country. So, the title, it's not as bad as it looks. That's very promising, isn't it? And Knoxville's kind of leading the way when it comes to being, not as bad as it looks and being very good. So a little bit about what we're doing in commercial real estate in Knoxville and what's happening. So we do about $200 million worth of deals every year. This year's probably going to be a little higher. It's actually going to be despite the economic woes we're in, will be Avis & Young's second best year. And the only reason it's not first is back in 21, we did 3 Amazon deals, and those tend to skew the numbers a little bit. So we don't budget off that year. We manage about 1.2 million square feet of space, and that's anything from a small shopping center all the way up to, if you're from Knoxville, the Goodies headquarters. Now it's Kimberly Park and South College. We'll all call it the Goodies headquarters. Second biggest building in Knoxville, largest privately owned building in Knoxville. So when we talk about the market and what's happening in and around Knoxville right now, here we are. So this is Knoxville for the last 12 months, not the country, just Knoxville. In the office side, occupancy is 92%, which is about 8 percentage points higher than it was pre-COVID. The exact opposite of what's happening around the country in the larger markets. Industrial, when we talk about industrial, that could be a 10,000 square foot flex space, kind of office warehouse, or it could be a 400, 500,000 square foot distribution center. Knoxville is 98%. There is nothing that can be found out there. One of the reasons is Knoxville doesn't have a lot of it because of topography and geography. If you drive down I-40, you drive to Nashville, you see a lot of huge warehouses. Why? Because they have flat land. We don't have flat land. We get the mountains, which I will take the mountains over the flat land. But that's one of the things we talk about. Retail, really good, especially if you're in a grocery anchored shopping center, hardly any vacancy. Western Plaza, a shopping center that we do the lease for and managing it, where Fresh Market's located. We did 9 deals in the last 18 months, including Orange Theory Fitness, Orbis, Five High, just constantly going. The only thing retailers are having to deal with is supply chain and, of course, labor, which is always the issue. Hospitality, like Crown Plaza, an enormous amount of activity around the market, especially in downtown. 4 new hotels being planned for downtown and the old city. We'll get into that in just a second. So if you talk about commercial real estate, you look at the national newspapers, you watch 60 Minutes, you see it's a disaster. And it is in a lot of cities, especially the big cities. I was at a conference in Chicago a couple of weeks ago, and it was about office real estate. And they broke us out into just different tables based on market size. So your primary markets like New York and Dallas, Chicago, San Francisco, and it was a lot of sad faces. You get into secondary markets, it's a little better. You sit down at the tertiary markets where Knoxville is, along with Tallahassee and Des Moines, Iowa, and East Lansing, Michigan. Everybody's smiling, everybody's happy, except for the East Lansing guys. And reason being, shockingly enough, it has a little bit to do with politics. East Lansing, their governor canceled 200,000 square feet of state office leases in one day. I mean, that'll put a pinch in your downtown, especially when you're a city like East Lansing. The guy who's sitting next to me was from Tallahassee, where Ron DeSantis is the governor, and everybody's back in the office Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. He's happy as can be. So we're seeing a lot of the small tertiary markets being a lot more successful when it comes to commercial real estate. Some of that has to do with the amount of development that's happening in the area. Knoxville has not had a lot of office buildings built, even or anywhere around the city since 2008. We were overbuilt going into the recession. Everybody recovered from that, but there's not as much development happening simply because it's more expensive, it's more difficult. The lending requirements are much more difficult. So while we're seeing, you know, a high level of occupancy, we don't have a lot of activity. Downtown Knoxville, Doug, you can't answer this question. When was the last building built in downtown Knoxville, office building? 1992. Wow. It is not BBT, it was Bank of America. But it is truly shocking. 1992, that Knoxville hasn't had an office building downtown. There's been obviously apartments, there's been some hotels, but if you want downtown Knoxville to grow, there needs to be a little more. It needs to turn into a 24-hour city, or at least an 18-hour city. And you need to have places for people to work that are new. When your prime office buildings, the two towers, they're great. They're 40+ years old. They're reaching an age limit. And truly it's something that Knoxville, I think, for downtown needs to recruit. It's easier said than done. Office buildings are exceptionally expensive when it comes to build. So we'll see what happens in the future. So we talk about why is Knoxville different? Well, Knoxville, we all know this, I don't want to tell you, but it's a great place to live. I mean, I didn't grow up, I grew up here, I'm sorry. I was here for my first 18 years, and like all 18-year-olds, I knew that Knoxville had given me everything it could possibly give me in my life. So I left 3 weeks after graduation, and I would come back and visit at Christmas if they asked really nice. Well, 13 years later, I decided to move back because I realized what I was missing not being in Knoxville. It's funny, I was with a group this a couple of years ago talking about what Knoxville has and how it can benefit. And there were a lot of people in this group that were in their mid-20s, they're 27 years old. They were kind of passionate about Knoxville and the scruffy city. They didn't like the name, but then I realized, maybe Knoxville is not the perfect place to be 25, but it's a great place to be 35. It's a great place to raise your family. And that's exactly where I was when we moved back here. So Knoxville is the place where people are moving. Knoxville, we're getting a lot of places, we're getting a lot of movement in town or into the city for people with funny access. That's kind of weird, isn't it? We're still getting a lot of development. We talked about the 4 hotels being built downtown. That one right there is kind of right next to the Hilton, kind of across the street next to where the Walnut building is. This Georgia developer paid $7.5 million for 0.8 of an acre. That is an outrageous number. I was truly shocked by it. But there are out of town developers coming in, to develop into our market. So we're seeing those consistent services that are growing, and hopefully we'll see more drive downtown and drive all around Knoxville. And we'll talk a little bit about residential here in just a second. Back to the office side real quick. One of the reasons we're seeing so much activity in the market and why we're seeing so much lack of vacancy in Class A office space. And when I say Class A, I'm talking about brand new office space or space that's 10 or 12 years old. The office users, companies have decided that it's a whole lot less expensive to spend money on office space than it is to try to recruit talent because they left because they don't like their work. And we're going to get into that in just a second. It's called flight quality. It is a real factor when it comes to commercial real estate. So what does Knoxville happen? What's happening now? What are we going to see? We've seen tons of growth around the market. What are we going to see next when it comes to Knoxville and how it's growing? So you're seeing this one. You're familiar with the Scripps building. It's called the Warner Brothers building, Discovery Campus, whatever you want to call it. This is a shocking development that's happened in Knoxville the last year. This building went on the market back in October of 2022. The day it went on the market, I got a call from the guy from the News Sentinel, and he asked, how long is it going to take to sell this building? I truthfully said, I don't know. I said, in this weird market, it could be under contract, or it could be on the market for 3 years, or it could be under contract in 3 weeks. I was wrong. It was under contract in 6 weeks. And this is a 350,000 square foot campus, a beautiful facility. This building, this is the newest building that, that Warner Brothers had, Discovery, I guess, built it. So it went on the market, it was sold in January, and in less than a year, it was sold again. So this office building, the whole project was bought by Apex Bank. Then this was bought by, Alternate State, the retailer. Truly shocking. I can tell you, buildings of this size and this quality, and this building rivals anything in Atlanta or Nashville. It is an amazing building. Nashville's the only market in America that has seen a building like that sell twice in the span of a year. It's truly shocking. And Apex, I can tell you, they did a masterful job getting into this deal, so I give them all the credit. And now Knoxville loses one big name and is replaced by another big name, because Alternate State is truly one of the great growing segments in retail this year. So it's really shocking that Knoxville's got that happening right now. Obviously, we're not far from where the ball fields are being built. So exciting that this is happening. I think there's going to be a tremendous amount of activity around it. You've already read some of the things that are happening, and those will continue to grow, continue to have smaller projects added to it that will allow it to expand. I certainly wish it wasn't taking so long. I jokingly, I was in Rome 2 years ago. I was touring the Coliseum, because you got to tour the Coliseum, and the guide said it only took 8 years to build the Coliseum. Like, wow, it's only taken 9 years to build our baseball. So it's really kind of shocking. I don't think they had OSHA back in Rome in the day, or unions. So that probably was a big factor. But so excited that the baseball facility is going to be built here. I told my wife I want this condo right there. That's probably going to lead to a divorce, but we'll see what happens. It'll be a lot of fun for a lot of people if they're into that downtown. That kind of leads me into residential, because we talked about condos, and this is the one time where we talk about residential, because there are some shocking numbers that are out there. Why are so many houses not on the market? Usually this time of year, we have about 4,500 houses on the market. In Metro Knoxville, they're 1,200 right now. Shockingly low. And one of the reasons is this right here. 80% of Tennesseans that own a home have an interest rate under 5%. So if you're an empty nester like me, you don't need the house anymore. You need something a lot smaller, but prices have gone up. Instead of paying 4.5% interest, you're gonna have to pay 7.5% or 8% interest. All of a sudden, you're not saving any money, and you're not living in your house that you love anymore. So you have a lot of people not putting houses on the market simply because it doesn't make financial sense to sell the house. The other one, this number came out this summer, land costs when it comes to construction. Back 11 years ago, if you wanted a quarter acre to build a house on, and it's a finished acre, it would cost you $30,000 in Metro Knoxville. Now it costs you $104,000 just for the dirt. How do you build a $250,000 house when you spend $100,000 on the land? You just can't do it. So those numbers are really swelled, and we're reaching that point where we have that missing middle discussion that everyone's talking about. How do you fix that? That's a real tough part. Jumping into the workforce real quick, I know people have talked about this in the past, and this was a really cool look at how not only we talk about generations, and every generation, the next generation is always the laziest. I know it is, and the world will fall apart thanks to that generation. But I was listening to a speaker a few weeks ago, and he talked about the workforce being a math problem, and I've never heard that before. Reason being is the baby boomers, there were 84 million baby boomers. So that's a whole lot of people, biggest generation we've ever had. Well, those baby boomers only had 65 million kids, because that's me, Generation X. So there's a 20 million person delta, workforce delta we have to work through. Not to mention the baby boomers are now leading the Gen Xers, the largest accumulation of wealth in the history of the world. So you got 20 million people there, and a lot of those, they're probably like, hey, Dad, thanks. I'm going to the beach. I'm not working. I'm going to go buy a couple of houses with everything, all the hard work you did. And, I appreciate the long retirement. So there's a lot of math that you got to work there. Until the millennials catch up, which they're just now catching up, to fill this gap, and then Gen Z are starting out, because they're replacing the baby boomers as the largest generation ever. Until that gap starts to shrink, we're going to continue to have a labor force problem. It's interesting. I've never seen anybody turn this into a math equation. I found that really really kind of surprising. So hopefully all the labor work will shrink here in the next little bit. And those people that are wanting to come into the office to work in, to become new professionals, they're wanting to move into new office space. Back in 2008, when the recession hit, office space was controlled by the CFOs because their job was to shrink the costs. Keep it, shove as many people as you can into a space so that we can keep our costs really, really low. They came up with an idea called benching. You sit down at basically a really nice picnic table with you and 8 of your workmates, and you all sit down at your computers and you work. Shrink that square footage that's required. The problem is, they found out after about 2 years, if one person sneezes, 5 other people are getting sick. And it wasn't a great environment to work in. So it started to shift away. It started to shift into, how do we recruit people? Well, by having kind of a nicer place to work. And that was accelerated with COVID. People realized they can't be shoulder to shoulder. They want that social distancing to a point. And instead of, while a lot of people want to work from home, a lot of other people want the social aspect of coming to work. Well, let's make this more today. Let's have an open space. Let's have the coffee bar. Let's have a keg in the afternoons, and you can bring your dog, and you can have all these different things. Because being in the office is important. We are all social. No matter how big of an introvert you are, you need that social aspect. And when I tell people, I have a 24-year-old who kind of wants to be in the office, kind of doesn't, and he talks about his boss, I said, the best way to be paid for your boss is to be there and to talk to him. It is really hard to brown those over Zoom. It's incredible. So this is where that flight to quality is coming from, because now HR has not decided, they did the math. If a person who makes $50,000 a year leaves you because he doesn't like working in your office space, it costs 30 to 50% of his salary to replace that person. So if it's a $50,000 salary, it costs whatever, $20,000, $25,000 to replace that person. And that's in putting the post on LinkedIn, onboarding, offboarding, interviewing, all these different things. Doesn't include the loss of business from time with customers. So all of a sudden, the HR person can be like, you know what would be really helpful? If we didn't lose all these employees because we're in a really bad space, let's move into nicer space. It doesn't cost that much, certainly doesn't cost as much as 20 to 30% of someone's salary. So let's spend a little more money on our real estate, have a place where people can be. And that's what we're seeing, where we're seeing a lot of growth. I've seen an enormous number of companies like home healthcare companies move from what I call $12 space into $24 space, because of this very reason. They want people to work and want to be happy where they're working and not have to spend time onboarding, offboarding, bringing new people in. So that's why we're seeing a lot of office space changes, and we'll continue to see space changes when it comes to ownership. We'll see this is a constant trend, but around the country, when you talk about global markets, we're talking about the selling of office, industrial, retail, anything. $2.4 trillion will mature in the next 5 years. Now that's a big deal, because a lot of those people bought buildings or financed buildings at 3% money, maybe even lower than that, and they're gonna have to refinance it at 7, 8, 9. Plus they're gonna have to put 35, 40% down, maybe more than that. That's gonna cause a real math problem. It's gonna cause there are gonna be a number of factors that are out there that will affect who owns buildings. Because every year, really 10 to 20% of space becomes mature. And you have to go back to the bank. And the bank does not have as much leeway as they did pre-COVID to kind of work with you on what those interest rates are. We saw a lot of investors 2018, 19, 20 that came into the market because they were able to borrow money at 3.5%, 4%. We have an entire generation of individuals that has no idea what it's like to finance a building at 6, 7, 8%, because 4% is the norm. When we all know 4% is not norm. Historically, it's 7 or 8%. I joke that 27 years ago, I bought my first house at 7 3/4, and I was thrilled to get 7 3/4. So it's going to be really interesting to see how all that shapes up, because as properties continue to mature, we're going to see a lot of trading, because I think there are a lot of people that just will have to maybe give the keys back to a building simply because they cannot refinance properties. And you're going to see much more experienced owners and developers get deeper into the industry, just because they know the right buttons to push and how hard to push those buttons to make this deal work. So what does the future look like? We don't know. I'm like an economist. This is what's going to happen unless these five things happen. Right now, I think we're in for that soft landing, I hope. And reason being because I think the labor market, we're not at a point where I think you're ever going to get back to 4%, 5%, 6% unemployment. They're what, 1.5 jobs available for every one person that's looking around. So while that is still happening, I think that soft landing is going to happen. It's so funny. You try and read the tea leaves, and I am no economist, but I listen. Sometimes I listen to Bloomberg surveillance in the morning on the way to the office. And one day it's rainbows and unicorns, and the next day it's pull your money out of the banks and bury it in the backyard. It's really a hard thing to measure. Every industry is going to be different. Every city is going to be different. So we don't have a true barometer of how everything's going to fall out, because this world is continuing to change thanks to real estate, the economy, gosh, and who knows what's going to happen with AI. That changed my industry in 6 to 8 months, and going to change even more and more. So a couple of things that are out there just give you some ideas of what's happening around the market. This building, the Mac building right over by the baseball stadium, it's one of 4 deals we've done within 400 yards of the baseball stadium, 800 yards of the baseball stadium in the last 4 years. Major developments that are happening because of baseball. Century Park 6, the only office building under construction right now. That is in Deep West Knoxville. It's a 60,000 square foot building, which is a pretty big building. You talk about pricing. The most expensive building in Knoxville right now is $26 a square foot. This one's going to be at $31. And it's just a function of of office space pricing, construction pricing, and interest rates. So not going to go through all these. I can tell you this Axis fabrication building, 40,000 square foot warehouse, nothing special about it, except it was under contract in 4 days. It tells you how busy the industrial space is. Has been very, very quickly. So this is a little bit about our portfolio. I will tell you talk about selling office buildings, the MIG building. You've seen that on Walker Springs today. So we did that deal literally in the last 2.5 hours. And that's been we've seen a lot of owner occupants. This was an investment deal because MIG is such a solid company. It's a single tenant building. So I know I've got a few minutes, I think. Yeah, about 2 or 3 minutes for questions. So if y'all have any questions, I would love to hear from you. Yes, ma'am.
I like your slide about the number of people in each generation in this country. But I think that the boomers also have inherited a huge amount of money from their parents. And now those, as boomers die off, that's going to be an even future amount of money to those. It's going to change anything about how we tax people, tax estate, tax real estate. And already in the Supreme Court case that came down against the National Association of Directors, one of them, what do you see happening in that?
Well, first of all, your first question about taxing, the answer is I hope not, because I'm Gen X. And it's, I think it depends on who's in office. I mean, I think, if we all know who likes to tax and who doesn't. So it's going to be more expensive. So I'll be interested to see on the residential side, when it comes to commissions, that's a better question for Kim. I know it's going to be a change.
Yours is all contractual. Everybody just agrees how much money each person is going to get out of it.
For the most part. So the first thing they say in real estate class, whether it's residential or commercial, it's commissions are not set in stone. Everything's negotiated. Yes, sir. Tam?
Justin, directionally within our community, where do you see the most opportunity, whether that's office space, small commercial, residential? I know we see a lot of activity in South Knoxville. Obviously, West Knoxville continues to grow, North Knoxville. From your perspective, where are you seeing, as you look out the next 3 to 5 years, where do you see most of the action?
So the most action, and it's all kind of segmented, depending on what you're looking for. South Knoxville is really exciting and everything that's grown there because it really had nowhere to go but up. We had a piece of property on the market. Sorry. Chapman Highway doesn't exactly bring a lot of good connotations to people who live there a lot. But we had a 42-acre piece of property we put on the market, I don't know, 3 weeks ago, in South Knoxville, not a flat piece. I mean, it's a difficult piece. It was on the market for 8 days and it got a full price offer from an out-of-town investor. So it kind of tells you what South Knoxville's happening. Multifamily is still the big growth point. I'm not a multifamily guy. I'm mainly an office and retail guy, but multifamily, Knoxville has more than 3,500 apartments in the pipeline right now. And that's from the plans perspective all the way up to almost finished in construction. So it's a, multifamily is really where it is. And multifamily, most of the growth is in East Knoxville and in Blount County. That's where we're seeing in Northern Sun Grove. Yep, one more that I gotta get off. Kim's told me.
What's attracting them? These big commercial deals that are coming here, that you can sell that piece of property in eight days without an owner. What got us on their radar?
This guy had what's called 1031 money, which basically means he sold a property and that profit, he's passing it in. And two, I think people are just saying that, you know, if you want to buy 42 acres in Nashville or anywhere close to Nashville, it would cost you $10 million. And he's got $1.5 million and he can sell it here. So thank you all. I am happy to stick around.
Hey, Justin, thank you so much for your insights. We all see it exploding everywhere. It seems like everyone's going to go through kind of nice to see the insider viewpoint that's going on. Each week we donate a book to